Remember to start the recording this time. Welcome to our first quarterly homeownership development partner meeting. We're excited to start these calls and have a few things that we wanted to share with everyone today, but also leave it open to discuss how we want these meetings to look like in the future, how to structure them, what future topics we might want to cover collectively. So we'll have time for having that discussion at the end. Before we get started, if everybody could, just keep adding people here, if everybody could put their name, organization, and one book, podcast, or TV show, movie recommendation that you're really into right now that you'd recommend to others. Will give us a little time to have other people join. Great, I see a Ted Lasso recommendation. There is with Anderson Cooper, All About Love by Bell Hooks. Ooh, a creepy podcast. Reservation Dogs. Great. For those who are just joining, we're putting our name, organization, and one book, podcast, movie or TV recommendation, if you have one. Great. Well, I think we've got some good recommendations here. We can get started. So I'm Talia with OHCS. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Elizabeth, who runs the LIFT program, and Kim, who is the assistant director of a lot of our programs, the homeownership programs. And I think we also have James from our communications department and Alexandra from government affairs. So we kind of have a lot of different people from different departments at OHCS. And the goal of these meetings is to really create a space where we have ongoing communication about homeownership development, share updates related to homeownership development, talk about a future vision for homeownership development that we can, so that we're aligning our ideas and vision together, and it's an ongoing conversation. And really just create an open forum to hear about issues that you're facing, what you're experiencing on the ground. We really want to learn from you. We are convening this, but that doesn't mean that we have to lead the conversation. So if there are others that want to lead a conversation, lead a specific topic in the future, just let me know. And again, we'll have time at the end to talk about the format moving forward. So for this meeting, I'm just going to share some updates related to work that we're doing around homeownership development. There's a lot of different irons in the fire here, and I think some of you have heard about the work, some of this work already. Some of you, this might be new, so feel free to chime in with questions. So first, I'll just start with an announcement that we are transitioning the LIFT program the LIFT homeownership program from affordable rental housing to homeownership. So affordable rental housing will still manage the rental lift part of the program, and homeownership will manage the homeownership lift part of the program, and we'll still be coordinating closely, and lift will look the same to you all. It might just you know, we will have a little more flexibility to update some of the processes for application. We won't have flexibility to change a lot of the program structure because that is dictated by the funding source, Article Q11 bonds. But that is just one announcement. The second is that we are working on a NOFA to be released in January. And that will be a combined NOFA with multiple funds available. I think many of you have heard this already, but it will include LIFT for homeownership, and then some of the flexible funds, which we're now calling HDIP, Homeownership Development Incubator Program. So it has a silly acronym now, but that one includes supplemental funding for LIFT projects, as well as capacity building grants, developer subsidies for nonprofit and for-profit projects. So they look somewhat different depending on the type of entity applying, and then a tribal set aside. And that framework is available up. I can post a link to our Housing Stability Council memo that was approved in September if you want to see what that framework will look like. And we're in the process of developing that NOFA. We had a call 2 weeks ago to hear feedback from many of you all about how to change the application process. So we're taking those suggestions to heart and thinking through what the application process will look like. And if you think of more suggestions or feedback, feel free to reach out to me. And we are also, one of the pieces of feedback was looking into flexibility related to the pro formas. And thank you, Jackie, who sent me an example. If others want to send us examples of pro formas that they've used for projects, that would be appreciated, totally not required. But if anybody has a kind of template that has worked well for them, please send it my way. Yeah, and then just some other feedback that we heard was just making sure to test the spreadsheet, host an office hours for questions once the NOFA is released. So we are taking all of those things into account. Another iron in the fire is that in order to get this program up and running, we need to develop rules for this new flexible homeownership pot of funding. And so many of you will see a release, hopefully, of temporary rules for the program, and know that that's just the start of creating rules. So we need to get the rules temporarily approved by DOJ so that we can keep things moving forward, but we will have a more prolonged public process for having participation in shaping the rules. So stay tuned for more on that. But we are also just going to try to prioritize getting the NOFA out on time, and then move on to really solidifying the rules and framework, or the rules really. And then the last, or I guess there's a few more announcements, but many of you saw our next year's budget request. So we have a budget request of 25 million. And those funds will really be used to align with our homeownership framework that was already approved. And we're hoping to take those funds and build off what we learned from the first year, and then try year 2 of this program. So that's kind of the idea behind that. I think that a new version of the policy option package for homeownership development is circulating and available. Sarah asked to repeat the NOFA date. We're hoping sometime in January 2023 will be the release. And then just related, going back to our agency review budget request, we hope to start having conversations early next year about what our next requests will be. The sooner the better. So I think this is a space where we can start having those conversations and thinking things through. That is kind of our future thinking plan. And then just last update is that some of you may remember, we received a legal opinion from Habitat for Humanity back in June with recommendations for improving our LIFT program. And we just wanted to say, we are still following up on that memo. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to doing our due diligence on our end. So we are, we've contacted and had meetings with 2 of the GSEs, Fannie and Freddie. We're hoping to connect with FHA soon. And then we've also spoken to DOJ about it. And so, we have to, Fannie and Freddie are taking things to their council and escalating things. And what we've heard is that to make any of these adjustments, they would have to come up with some kind of exception or workaround for us, which can be difficult if it's dealing with many different lenders. So we're still working with them to try to think through what some solutions might be. But for those of you that, I know this doesn't apply to everybody on the phone, so sorry. But for those of you that have been wondering what's happening with our response to that memo, just know that we are trying to get some answers and trying to get more information about what is possible through the GSEs, and then we'll have to take that back to our DOJ. So there's a lot of different agencies involved, but we will keep you posted. And with that, as we've been thinking about that memo and having conversations with the GSEs, a few questions came up in our minds to ask you all. And so this relates whether you've accessed LIFT funding or not, but just I'll ask a few questions, and if anybody wants to chime in and just share some answers related to them, please do. So just one question that's come up is, in the case of a foreclosure or owner turnover, how much time does it typically take to get a new home buyer in? And kind of along with that, what does your home buyer pipeline look like? And I know that may look different at different times of the year, but hoping to hear from you all around that. And then another question that's come up is just if your agency is in a place where it's given the right of first refusal for a home, how feasible is it that you have the cash on hand to purchase the home in the case that there is a little bit of a time lag between getting a new homeowner in? So I can post these questions in the chat and would just love to hear some of your thoughts, whether it's in the chat or you want to just come off mute. There's a small enough group that you can come off mute if you want, or raise your hand and I can call you. And Jackie, we can talk about the homeownership market cost offset fund after this.
I guess I can start unless somebody else wants to jump in. So let's back up. So I'll go from the bottom up. 100% feasible that we would buy the home back. In the case of foreclosure, how many turnovers, how much time does it typically take to get a new home buyer in? We're giving ourselves typically 45 days. And that's not our foreclosure, that's just if some homeowner wants to resell, they give us notice, there's a notice timeline, and then it's 45 days after that. The notice timeline tends to be like 30 days. So then you're looking at that sum. And the first question, what does your home buyer pipeline looks like? What do you mean by that? Can you clarify that one a little bit?
Yeah, like on any given day, do you have a waiting list of home buyers that are ready once the next house is available? And how many home buyers long is that list range?
Yeah, so we have on our interest list over 100 qualified home buyers. We haven't updated that since last year. So that would increase.
Thanks, Jackie.
I can jump in. I'm Sarah Radcliffe. I'm brand new at Habitat for Humanity, Portland region. I've only been here a few days. So these are some of the questions that I've been asking myself. And today I met with the folks who do the home buyer side of it. So I got a few answers. It sounds like in our last round, so we don't maintain a waiting list. We do a new round of applications every time we have homes that are coming online. And in our last couple of rounds, we've had 800 to 1,000 applicants for 20 to 40 homes. So it seems like there are a lot of people, and we don't, we do kind of a lottery and sorting system before we qualify those applicants. So, you know, we're not assessing qualifications on all of those, but that is the size of the pool. And in terms of a foreclosure, I'm just going to do the best that I can here because I don't really know the intricacies of our program too well yet, but it sounds like our new mortgages are held by First Republic. And if the homeowner misses more than 2 payments, then we buy that mortgage back and we work with the homeowner. So I think we're really trying to avoid foreclosures. And it's my understanding that if the homeowner wants to sell, that we either buy it back or work with Proud Ground to do that.
Thanks, Sarah, and welcome.
Thank you.
Good for only a couple days on the job.
Hopefully I didn't say anything wildly inaccurate.
Hi. I can go. Honestly, this is not really my forte, but I can do the best I can. At Proudground, I feel like we usually buy our homes back if we have the like capability to. And like, what's the turnaround time? I feel like usually it's like a month, if not maybe 2. But and I'm sorry, I missed what like your explanation of what do your home buyer pipelines look like.
Like if there's a waiting list for homes.
Oh yeah, so we do have that, and it like it's kind of based off of like what people are interested in. So like they'll apply for that interest, and then we'll like based off of when they got into our like applicant list, that's how they get into the home. So it just varies.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Okay, we have there are a few questions in the chat. If anybody else feels like chiming in for those questions, chime in. But Sarah asked about the DPA RFA, and Kim, thank you for answering. It's in final review, so we hope that it will be up soon. Yeah, so stay tuned any week now. for the homeownership market cost offset fund, that is something just for everybody on here that is available for projects that have a lift reservation before the last round, so 2021 and before. Let's see, how would you like us to show the gap based on home buyer interest rates? So Jackie, are you asking, like,
Well,
how do you want to show that you're having to subsidize the house more?
yeah, so I mean, in the application, it's really around construction costs, but we've gotten wind that it can also be for increasing interest rates, which makes it not affordable for home buyers. And so do you just want the amount of what we were going to price the homes at, and then what we are pricing the homes at, or are we looking more detailed? How can we best show that to the state?
Yeah, the former, you can update, because in the sources and uses, there's a, on the bottom, there's a part where you can update the sales price of the home and also the amount of subsidy that you're putting into the home. And so if you can share that and share a little bit more in the narrative about how you are determining that, since interest rates are changing, yeah, that would be great.
Thank
Oh yeah, can I jump in just for a second? Jackie, I think you were included in an email that I just sent out like 20 minutes before this meeting, but we had asked this question and Talia gave a pretty good response to it. So if anybody needs that in writing, we have that. I think some of you were on that email response. We also, Emily created a pretty handy chart based off of some of the areas where we work at that are identifying kind of interest rates in relation to incomes, area median incomes, and then determining sales prices off of that. That might also be, that's something that we're going to use as a tool to kind of substantiate in place of a like construction bid, for example. I think we shared, Talia, I think Emily shared that with you. That's also a good kind of way to demonstrate overall kind of how the shifting interest rates have an impact. So we're happy to, I think we need to, unfortunately, the chart stopped at 6.25% and it looks like we're going to be up near 10. So let us modify that chart and then we're happy to share it with folks as well.
Kim, do you want to take this next question? And thanks, Erin. Any update on if and when Oregon bond might open up to additional lenders?
Mary, I don't have a date yet. We are working on a new lender solicitation for our new flex lending program. This won't be a surprise to you, Mary, because you've been around forever, but with our limited funding sources right now to fund the bond program due to our private activity bond limitations for the next year, we have switched and we are selling taxable bonds. We're still blending them with some of our tax exempt bonds to try and keep the rate as low as we possibly can. Our rates have not been that great. They're better, a little bit better than the private sector, but they're not the great rates that we would love to have. And that's just because of the cost of selling bonds and all the, what I call the back end operations of selling bonds and all the intricate details of that our rates are having to be higher because of that. But those are ongoing conversations that we're having. In fact, at a meeting at 3, Mary, I'm having another conversation around that. So, and hopefully that solicitation will be out. Oh gosh, I'm hoping next month. So for new lenders.
Any other questions about current programs? Otherwise, we just wanted to put forth what topics you want to discuss in the future, but maybe we could think about now and then think about the future.
Does Erin still have a question or she just did not lower her hand?
My bad,
I'm
I'll lower my
guessing.
hands. Sorry
Okay.
about that. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, we had a few ideas of potential topics for future meetings. I mean, we don't want to, we know that there's the Housing Alliance Homeownership Work Group where a lot of things are discussed there. But I think one potential topic is just talking through the JARDO proposals, so the Joint Task Force on Addressing Racial Disparities in Homeownership. There's a lot of proposals, and the final report will be released, or it's already up, and I think it will be voted on this week. I can link to that. So if anybody wants to talk through any of those proposals, we could do that at one of these meetings. Another thing we were thinking about is we've heard a lot of buzz around or interest around lease to own programs and interest in learning more how they have worked or haven't worked. So this might be a forum for learning from each other. We've also heard some questions about possibilities with mixing home ownership and rental dollars. And right now we don't really have a precedent for that, but that's something we could talk through more. But yeah, would love to hear anybody's thoughts on things that they want to talk about in future homeownership development meetings, and or potential for a format, or suggestions for a format so that it can be more interactive, because we don't want to make this just a space where we're talking at you. We want it to be a conversation. So yeah, would love any thoughts on topics or format ideas.
Talia, the other one I'd add is co-op. You know, if anyone's looking at co-op models or in the community, if there's discussion around that, I know those are some other conversations. And I know nationally across homeownership, there's a lot of conversations starting around what co-op, you know, homeownership would look like and what potential funding is used and, you know, who manages it. And so there's just a lot of conversations nationally about that. So
Yeah, I would echo that. We'd be interested in the idea of using a CLT base for then a limited equity co-op on top to support home buyers who cannot come up with the full mortgage that currently is required.
Rose with CASA, I just put in the chat that we did get a grant to explore multifamily cooperative either development and or preservation of an existing multifamily.
Thanks, Rose. And you're appearing as Lauren. That's strange.
That is really weird. Yeah, he gave me the Zoom link. I kept looking for myself and I didn't see it. So I'll change that.
Are there topics that would be useful to hear from each other and or topics that anybody would be interested in presenting about to the group? We don't have to make it that formal, but yeah. Okay, go for it, Sarah.
Okay, no, Talia, I was just gonna jump in, not a new topic, but I do like the idea of revisiting the JARDO recommendations. And I'm gonna take a look at that report. And I just wanted to share that last week we had the opportunity to bring in seven or nine, it was 7 Habitat current homeowners to review the proposals that Shannon actually did a presentation with them on, so we could get some of their actual homeowner feedback and take it back before we completed some surveys. And so, they were really well received. It was really interesting to see the ones that they kind of lifted up as priority for their communities. That's
awesome. Any surprises with things that they were supportive or not excited about?
I don't know that there were any surprises. There's so many good ideas and concrete, tangible, they were very interested in the equity building proposal, for example, that would kind of fast tracked asset building and equity.
Great, thanks for sharing that. I'm thinking if there aren't a lot of ideas that people want to share right now, maybe we could do a survey of potential topics and ideas. I think other than that, that's all we had on our agenda. Anyone else? Thoughts, questions for the good of the order?
Talia, it's Kim. Is there, I'd be curious too, if there's things happening in your community that you would want to share, like conversations maybe you're having like with the city or the county for partnerships or other, maybe schools or colleges, like on workforce housing development. Jackie, I'm thinking of you because I know the city of Bend is very active in, home ownership development and, the housing need in Bend. And I know OSU has property and a campus over there. Ironically, we're planning a home ownership conference in Bend next year in June. And we were talking to Kevney at Travel Bend, and I brought your name up and Lynn, and he just was so surprised in his world, right? He's talking to you and that we all kind of know each other. And so if there's like any of those partnerships or conversations that may be happening, I think that would be helpful for us to know too, and good for our communications and, government relations team. If there's other ways that we can look at, maybe replicating that, if there's ways that, we need to be at the table for some of those conversations. So
I can share a little bit. So it would be awesome if the state would bring back the workforce housing program. Here in Bend, we are creating that program without any state funding. So we have major employers, local quasi-government, and travel and like tourism organizations who are funding CORE to give preference to local workforce. And we are getting a legal opinion so that we can give preference to folks who work in the county for these major employers. Not only would that preference be for the first time, it would be upon every resale. We're doing this to fill the gap because there's not enough state or local money. So these major employers would be contributing subsidy permanently as a grant. We are happy to share this more publicly as this rolls out. And if you have any questions about how we structured it, you're welcome to ask me. You can also look up how the state structured their 2018 workforce housing program, because we're structuring it the exact same way.
Thanks, Jackie. We would be interested in seeing more of the details of that. And so maybe we can make that a topic for a future meeting. And Erin, I see Did you re-raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I raised my hand this time. I'm learning how to use it properly. So I've been having a lot of conversations with different jurisdictions who are really interested in bringing affordable homeownership to their communities, and they're experiencing some kind of political tension around kind of the AMI restrictions, and just really interested in having conversations around, is there any around flexibility with the area median income. They've got, you know, in a lot of the communities where we work, same with the sort of workforce housing issues, is that it's not just the folks that kind of cap out at the 80%, but even folks that are at the 100% or 120% are still really struggling. And especially like on the political side, it's sometimes difficult to get the support to do a CLT project because there's such a need for that kind of 100 to, you know, 100% of the area median income, or 120 as well. And so there's just a lot of tension. And so we've been having some interesting conversations around trying to figure out ways to negotiate that and still be able to meet some of that, but stick to the 80% area median income as well. So that's been a big one. And I think another sort of group of conversations or bucket of conversations that we've been having is kind of really thinking strategically about how to integrate these this homeownership funding source and creativity with that, with all the missing middle legislation that now people are like finally getting their head around, in terms of the specifics and the changes. Lots of communities looking at and are curious, and you know, so it's just how what we're doing integrates with some of those code changes more locally in the different regions, and how we can, that seems to me like an opportunity for us all to kind of gain a little bit of communications momentum, probably a missed opportunity in some ways. So that's also another bucket of conversations we've been having with a few newer areas where we're looking to do projects in the near future.
Thanks, Erin. Are you seeing tension around AMI restrictions more in rural communities and urban?
I'd probably say more urban, but even in some rural communities, I think where workforce housing is a particular, like, especially if it's seasonal, and so they don't necessarily meet the standard AMI restriction. So yeah, it's popping up in both, but I would say that the biggest areas are kind of along the I-5 corridor.
Any other emerging issues or topics that people are interested in?
This is a long shot, but as cities adopt House Bill 2001 and some of the new codes, they don't know how to handle the permitting or lack of permitting that this overlay has put on their city. And so we try and use it, and then we get up against the city and they say, well, we didn't really write this, so we're hesitant to push it forward, even though they have to. And so I think it would be helpful, I don't know what type of meeting that is, if you have local jurisdictions in the state and nonprofit developers coming together so we can actually, so House Bill 2001 implementation being such a good policy isn't slowed down by local cities kind of unable to manage it. We're seeing that now here in Central Oregon.
I know Alexandra's on here, and I'm going to put her on the spot, but just if that's something that we could maybe coordinate with DLCD, is that right? Because weren't they the ones part of that? Or is it? I get confused, so I'm just going to say that up front. There's so many bills and trying to track of who is what. And Jackie, I will say I live in Kaiser, and so I know our planning commission has spent a lot of time and had a lot of public hearings around how to adopt everything out of that House bill. So I think that would be a great conversation. I'm just not sure how we bring everyone together, but that would be great.
Yeah, it's not just about adopting it, it's then once they have their first project and they have to do it. And maybe we can just have like a pilot where we do it, we have a conversation with our group and then we can share that with the broader group about other folks who might be having challenges. But it's definitely slowing development.
Yeah, that could be a conversation to have with like LOC or something. So that one predates my time at OHCS, so I don't quite remember the logistics of how that bill is implemented. We as OHCS don't technically have any purview over it, which puts us in kind of a weird, wonky situation where we have developments that would go into there that we would potentially fund, but we ourselves don't have any kind of oversight over that. So we get into a weird situation. Yeah, that one's tricky.
Seems like that was a big part of the conversation at the Housing Oregon conference. And so, yeah, I wonder if we can coordinate with some of their policy group and also DLCD around that issue.
And I think the League of Oregon Cities, Alexandra, we could probably reach out to Ariel, right? I mean, that would probably be a good starting point.
Erin, do you have your hand raised again?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. So this is a little bit of a hard left from what we were just talking about, but and it's a pretty nuanced issue, but for those of us who have gone through the subdivision process and have had to manage the utility bonding issue at the local level, this is a state mandate to basically require developers to pay an additional utility bonding to the local jurisdiction to ensure that the utilities that are being put in place through the construction period are secured. Given that for those of us who have state funding already secured for infrastructure, this is kind of a double bonding process for us. And it actually costs us a significant amount. So one of the things on Dev Northwest's legislative agenda is to try and get that changed this year. It has good intentions for market rate development, but given now that there are these affordable developments coming out, it doesn't make sense that we would both pay for the performance bond and the utility bonds on top of it when the funds that we're using to pay for that infrastructure are coming from secured state funds. So it's a very nuanced issue, but it comes with a price tag of several $100,000 that we haven't been able to avoid. And so we're hoping to see if we can tweak that this time around.
Great. I think we have a really good list going now. I will reach out to some of you who have made some suggestions so we can have somewhat of a format of bringing people to present an issue, but then also having conversations. So you all are the experts, so hopefully you will be amenable to presenting a specific topic to the group, and we can just, go from there. So expect possibly a survey from me before the next call, or at least we will send out an agenda in advance and a reminder. But thank you all for joining today. And if you think of anything else, feel free to email me. Put my email in the chat. And we look forward to future conversations. So thank you, everybody. Have a good one.